second reading what day?
25th of April.
25th of April. We now come to the main business of the day. The clerk will now proceed to read the orders of the day.
Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and International Committee of the Red Cross Status Bill Lords, second reading.
No.
Minister to move second reading.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I beg to move that the bill be now read a second time and put on record my previous engagements with the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, many wonderful and excellent and informative trips contributing to our relationships across the Commonwealth, and indeed my past engagement with the ICRC. And Madam Deputy Speaker, I am delighted to see this bill back in the House, and I hope there will be wholehearted unity in the House today in making sure that this makes it to royal assent. The last time this bill, and I think this is the fourth iteration of it, but the last time this bill was debated here, it was a private member's bill in the last session, which sadly ran out of time before the dissolution of Parliament for the general election. And I do want to first, Madam Deputy Speaker, pay tribute to the former member for Basingstoke for her tireless work in introducing and pushing that bill through, and indeed the work of many of the members, including some of those that I see here today, for their work not only with the CPA but also with the ICRC in the past. And it is absolutely crucial and critical, Madam Deputy Speaker, that both the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and the International Committee of the Red Cross are given their correct status in UK legislation to conduct their work and deliver their objectives while operating in the UK. This will help guarantee that the CPA remains headquartered in the UK, and that the UK is able to give the ICRC the guarantee that the confidential information it shares as a matter of course with the UK Government is secure and protected. Madam Deputy Speaker, the UK is deeply committed to the Commonwealth and believes that the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, which is currently underway in Samoa, which my colleague the Foreign Secretary is of course attending, will be an important opportunity to mobilise action on shared interests, including upholding shared Commonwealth values, values which are embodied by the CPA's important work to strengthen inclusive and accountable democracy across the Commonwealth. And I think back to my own many engagements with the CPA, both delegations visiting here and indeed delegations I've taken part in. I've seen that work firsthand, Madam Deputy Speaker. The UK values its partnership with the CPA, and it's proud to support the work being done by the CPA and its regional branch, of course, CPA UK. And this includes developing benchmarks as indicators of parliamentary democracy and addressing modern slavery in supply chains and issues such as gender-based violence, and doing that with parliaments and parliamentarians across the Commonwealth. The ICRC, Madam Deputy Speaker, is of course an essential partner for achieving the UK's global humanitarian objectives, and it of course has a unique mandate from states to uphold the Geneva Conventions and works globally to promote international humanitarian law. Its impartiality, neutrality and independence allow it to engage and negotiate with all parties to a conflict and to provide protection and humanitarian assistance to vulnerable populations, often in contexts where other agencies are unable to operate. And indeed, I have witnessed and seen their important work in the past in opposition, and indeed in my past career in the humanitarian sector. Clauses 1 and 2 of the bill will therefore provide for both organisations to be treated in a manner that is comparable to an international organisation, with the associated privileges and immunities. Treatment as an international organisation will allow the CPA to continue to operate fully across the Commonwealth and international fora, and allow the organisation to participate fully in areas where it is currently restricted, including signing up to joint international statements and communiques. And this is vital in ensuring that the CPA can continue its work on promoting democracy and good governance across the Commonwealth. The CPA is currently registered with the Charity Commission for England and Wales and is not an international intergovernmental organisation, and it therefore has its own unique constitutional arrangements reflecting its specific international mandate. For the ICRC, Clause 2 of the bill is critical to enabling it to operate in the UK in accordance with its international mandate, maintaining its strict adherence to the principles of neutrality, impartiality and independence, and its working methods of confidentiality. The ICRC is also not an intergovernmental organisation, but instead has its own unique and historical international humanitarian mandate to protect the lives and dignity of victims of armed conflict and other situations of violence, and to provide them with assistance. The provisions under both of these clauses in the bill I will happily give way.
Doubts the good work of the CPA or the ICRC. We've all seen it as parliamentarians. But does he understand that many of us would be a little bit leery about conferring privileges and immunities by ordering council after the passage of the bill, since this House is not in general in the habit of granting privileges and immunities without scrutiny?
I think he can be assured that these are the appropriate measures, and we've determined this way, in line with the previous discussions on the bill in its previous iteration, that this is the best way to achieve this, and to achieve it in a timely fashion so that we can make sure that these provisions are brought in place for the CPA and for the ICRC. But I'm very happy to write to him further on this matter, and of course the bill will face committee scrutiny where we'll be able to discuss these matters in greater detail. As I was saying, Madam Deputy Speaker, the provisions under both clauses will ensure that the CPA and the ICRC can be accorded comparable treatment to an international organisation, even when the definition of international organisation in existing legislation is limited to intergovernmental organisations. For the CPA, this treatment will be limited to the core international organs of the CPA, such as the Secretariat. It's not intended that any privileges, immunities or other facilities be extended to any of the national or subnational branches, so this is a limited provision. The arrangements for both organisations will detail the day-to-day management of the privileges and immunities granted on a functional needs basis and other facilities. For example, they will make clear that there will be no immunity for the CPA, Secretary-General or representatives of the ICRC in respect of damage caused by, for example, a motor vehicle operated or owned by either. And it's very important that the way that limitations and requirements have been set out in this regard. Clause 2(1)(e) lays out also an important confidentiality provision, providing for the protection of certain information provided in confidence to His Majesty's Government by the ICRC from being disclosed in UK civil court proceedings or under any statutory provision or rule of law. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, as my noble friend Baroness Chapman stated during second reading in another place, this provision reflects the ICRC's standard working method of confidentiality, which is designed to protect its staff and operations in active conflict zones. The public disclosure, and I'm sure members of the House will understand this, of information that the ICRC obtains from confidential dialogue with conflict parties is likely to put their ability to have confidential dialogue with conflict parties, its humanitarian access and indeed the security of its staff at risk, and might result in the ICRC restricting the information it shared with the UK. However, and I think this touches on the concerns that others have raised in the past, the bill does not provide an absolute blanket exemption for disclosure requirements for all ICRC communications. Important limitations have been incorporated, for example, the exclusion of criminal cases. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Government continues to be committed to respecting the confidentiality of ICRC information as a matter of policy, and past practice has demonstrated the importance of doing so. And this bill is an opportunity to end any uncertainty about the Government's position and to put this practice on a statutory footing. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to turn briefly to Clause 3. The provision under this clause is equivalent to Section 8 of the International Organisations Act 1968, which allows for the Secretary of State to certify questions of fact relating to the status of all the privileges and immunities conferred on the organisations. This is as if, in the context of court proceedings, a question arises as to whether a person is entitled to any privilege or immunity by virtue of an order in council made under Clause 1 or 2 of the bill. Such a certification is to be treated as conclusive evidence of those facts for the purposes of proceedings. Clause 4, referring to the Honourable Gentleman's comments earlier on, details the scope and extent of the orders in council conferring privileges and immunities to both organisations under Clause 1 and 2 respectively. An order in council may make different provisions for different cases or persons, and they may also contain consequential, supplementary, incidental, transitional or saving provisions. And this clause also provides the enabling power for two important aspects. Firstly, the order in council may specify circumstances where privileges and immunities do not apply, either because of an exception or because they've been waived by the organisation. And secondly, the order in council may specify that fiscal reliefs and exemptions are subject to arrangements or conditions imposed by the Secretary of State. Madam Deputy Speaker, finally, Clause 4 provides that any order in Council made for these purposes will be subject to the draft affirmative parliamentary procedure, and this means that they will require the approval of both houses before they may have effect. And the list of privileges and immunities which may be conferred on both organisations is set out in the schedule to the bill and has been informed by the International Organisations Act that I referred to earlier on. Madam Deputy Speaker, finally, turning briefly to Clause 5, this clause explains that the term the ICRC means the International Committee of the Red Cross, as given under Clause 2.1a of the bill, and it also ensures that the definition of statutory provision allows for the treatment of the CPA and the ICRC as international organisations to be applied in respect of all relevant legislation, primary and secondary, including devolved legislation in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, whenever made. Madam Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, and to reiterate what was said in another place, this bill will give the CPA and the ICRC the correct status in UK legislation to allow for both organisations to continue their international operations without unnecessary restriction. The Government has a strong commitment to the Commonwealth. It continues to support our global humanitarian objectives through our work with the ICRC, and this bill is a true reflection of that, and I hope it will enjoy the wholehearted and swift support of the House in proceeding into law, and I commend this bill to the House.
The question is that the bill be now read a second time, and I call Alicia Kearns, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I wish first to pay tribute to my right honourable friend, the former member for Basingstoke, Maria Miller, who brought a bill to this House on this issue no fewer than 3 times and championed it so vigorously, and I thank the honourable gentleman for his kind words about her. Before the House was dissolved, the bill had completed its passage through the House of Commons and its second reading in the House of Lords. As such, we on these benches, despite the numbers behind me that may suggest otherwise, will be supporting this bill and an update of this having been brought before Parliament. I also, however, wish also to thank my noble friend Baroness Annalise of St John's, who in the other place has long campaigned for the provisions in this bill, and Lord Ahmed, the previous Minister of the Commonwealth, who understood fully the need and importance of this bill. I should also at this note pay tribute to the right honourable gentleman for Melton and Syston, who wrapped up this debate when we were in government last. I fear I shall not quite do the same justice that he did, but I shall do my best as a neighbour of his. Now, this may be a small and technical bill, but it is an important one. The legal changes in the bill will ensure the continued success of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and the International Committee of the Red Cross in the UK, 2 organisations which do vital work. As you're aware, Madam Deputy Speaker, Mr Speaker is President of the UK Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, and the work is indispensable in helping realise the Commonwealth Charter's commitment to the development of free and democratic societies. Now, it's timely that we debate this bill today, as the honourable gentleman said, as the Commonwealth Heads of Government meet in Samoa. This is the first ever Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting to be held in a Pacific small state island, and that demonstrates the importance of the Commonwealth in empowering the voices of smaller states, but also the equity of membership of all those in the Commonwealth. Now, I have been privileged to both attend and speak at CPA summits under Mr Speaker's presidency and have learned a huge amount for Commonwealth colleagues. However, perhaps surprisingly for those in the House, I have not to declare any foreign visits with them. The CPA creates pathways to friendships across the Commonwealth, building up person-to-person relationships which matter so very much. But we're all very aware of the acute threats to democracy internationally. And the CPA is a genuinely positive institution, allowing best practice to be shared, linking parliamentarians in friendship and strengthening resilience across our societies. And long may it continue. I would very happily give way to my honourable friend.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, and I very much welcome this bill in support of these 2 important organisations. With the King currently in Australia as the head of the Commonwealth, will my honourable friend join me in paying tribute to the Commonwealth, that family of nations with shared values, and furthermore to the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, which, as the Shadow Minister has said, provides such an opportunity to share best practice and actually spread the common good of democracy right across the Commonwealth.
I thank my honourable friend for that contribution, because it is so rare in this House that we celebrate the positive, and this is exactly what this is. And we should be proud of the way His Majesty has championed the Commonwealth despite in all his time, before he was our monarch and also now as the monarch. And I know that we look forward to the fact that he will be in Samoa in the coming days. As we all aware, the CPA does bring this, and the Conservative government proudly ran multiple projects with the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association to strengthen the democratic nature of legislators and the way in which decisions are approached and made. Ultimately, this bill will amend the legal environment to ensure the CPA remains headquartered here in the UK, and that is something we can all agree again is unambiguously positive. Now, in an increasingly dark world, it is worth fighting for those small shoots of light which offer a glimpse of a path to a better future, and this is one. Turning now to the International Committee of the Red Cross. The ICRC has a unique legitimacy to engage all parties to conflicts and unparalleled access to vulnerable people in conflict zones. Frequently, it is the only agency operating at scale in conflicts, and for example, it is currently operating in Ukraine, Afghanistan and Syria, and I declare an interest here, having previously worked with them in some of those zones. In 2023 alone, the ICRC's 18,000 staff support over 730 hospitals, mainly in conflict zones, and provided food assistance to over 2.7 million people. I'm proud the previous Conservative government committed £1 million to the ICRC to provide life-saving care and essential supplies to people affected by the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh. This bill will guarantee for the ICRC that sensitive information it must be able to share with government is protected. We do not want the ICRC to have to restrict the information it shares with the UK due to the risk of disclosure, so this is an important step, particularly when it comes to hostages. With so much suffering globally, we need to take every possible step to ensure our humanitarian efforts are effective, and I'm pleased there will be, I hope, cross-party agreement on this. This bill will mean the UK extends the privileges and immunities to both organisations in a manner comparable to that of an international organisation of which we are a member. This may be a little novel, Madam Deputy Speaker, but it is a neat legal solution that addresses both of the central challenges around which the bill is centred. Now, whilst these changes provide a firm footing for the future work of both the CPA and the ICRC, they also offer the opportunity for fulfilment of important foreign policy objectives. So if they are to be a success, the government must seize these opportunities presented by the bill. Once our relationship with the ICRC is secured, how does the government plan on improving collaboration and, mostly importantly, results? What shared areas of interest will the government focus on, and how will this manifest in tangible outcomes? And has the Minister assessed which specific parts of this bill will facilitate that work, and would he share that assessment with the House? On the CPA, has the Minister scoped any additional support the government could provide to both the delegation and institutions as a whole to bolster its work? And will he commit to building on the good work of the Conservative government to help strengthen institutions in Commonwealth countries in a whole-of-ecosystem approach? Finally, when we were in government, we committed that the Foreign Secretary would consult with the Chair of the UK branch and the Secretary-General of the CPA and the President and Director-General of the ICRC, respectively, before finalising secondary legislation. So can the Honourable Gentleman confirm this has taken place? We know that for democracies to thrive, there needs to be an equilibrium across a range of different areas, from justice and application of rule of law, to protection of human rights, freedom of speech, safeguards against corruption, effective efforts to counter extremism, integrity within the public sector, and the capability to face down external threats and protect your people. At a time where the world is more insecure and more dangerous, we are faced by authoritarian states bent on undermining the open international order upon which so much of our security and prosperity rests. The Commonwealth is more important than ever, and we must not allow any insinuation otherwise to undermine our efforts with this organisation. This is an organisation which accounts for more than a quarter of the membership of the UN, and more needs to be done with it. And crucially, through the Commonwealth Charter, it is a champion of the sound values and principles that must prevail in the future if we are to build a better world. This government must not forego the opportunity to really deepen that cooperation with Commonwealth partners and enhance the benefits of membership, because membership of the Commonwealth can and must be seen to a route to a better future, fundamentally rooted in those noble values set out in the Commonwealth Charter. We must strengthen intra-Commonwealth trade, build up the economies of countries who are struggling to attract inward investment, boost resilience, particularly when it comes to small island developing states, and central to today's debate, promote democracy and good governance through respectful and understanding collaboration. For every tyrant sacrificing innocent lives in the pursuit of unbridled power, there are thousands of hard-working, conscientious people working to make their contribution for a better future. The CPA and the ICRC embody this noble tradition, and the changes today will secure their continued success. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, we support this bill, as we did in the last Parliament, and we will encourage the government to make the most of every opportunity it confers.
Call the Chair of the International Development Select Committee, Sarah Champion.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's actually a real honour to follow the Honourable Member for Rutland and Stamford, and I agree with her high praise on both CPA and the International Committee on the Red Cross. I'm going to focus on the Red Cross, Red Crescent, but just to say, I personally have benefited so much from the CPA. It has, the members that are part of it have shared their experiences. It's always a joy when they come to Parliament here to, well, we love, as parliamentarians, learning from each other, so that's a great benefit to me personally. But also to build on the points the Honourable Member was making, we're in a very fragile world, and this is an opportunity for us to invest both time and money and commitment to our Commonwealth family, because we need each other right now more than ever. I want to turn to the International Committee of the Red Cross, and indeed the whole of the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement, because they provide hope to hundreds of thousands of people across the globe every day who are facing disasters of many kinds. And I'd like to personally thank the ICRC for their consistent and valuable engagement with my committee. And for these reasons, I fully support the bill. The network comprises of 80 million people. The majority of those are volunteers, and they help with others facing disasters, conflict, health issues and social challenges, and I pay tribute to them. The movement consists of the ICRC, 191 national Red Cross and Red Crescent societies, and the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent societies. The ICRC itself has more than 18,000 staff in over 90 countries, and their work has gained them 3 Nobel Peace Prizes. In a time when more than 65 million people are fleeing 120 armed conflicts globally, the work of this organisation is so vitally important and cannot be underestimated. The ICRC organisation is also crucial to parliamentary engagement with these situations, and I'm sure members across the House have benefited from their wisdom. Their ability to provide the International Development Committee with up-to-date, impartial, trustworthy and relevant briefings from the ground, and they do those in private where necessary, has allowed successive committees to raise the profile of disasters and, importantly, hold governments to account for their responses. In just February this year, their teams in Egypt met with the committee on the humanitarian situation in Gaza. The Egyptian team were coordinating all of the supplies into Gaza at that point, and their work was phenomenal. This is a group of volunteers who uprooted themselves to go to where others needed their support the most, and what I witnessed was nothing short of remarkable. Madam Deputy Speaker, the brave workers, though, in this movement continue to pay the ultimate price. In the year 23 to 24, 6 ICRC staff members were killed globally. As of the 27th of October, 22 Palestinian Red Crescent Society workers have been killed in Gaza and the West Bank. 6 members of the Magen David Adom, the Red Cross in Israel, have also been killed whilst helping others since October, the 7th of October 23. And yet their colleagues continue with the life-saving medical care, food distributions, water and sanitation projects, supporting those detained and reminding parties of their obligations under the international humanitarian law in diabolical war zones. I would like us all to remember and pay tribute to their sacrifice today. Early in my first tenure as chair of IDC, I met with the former president, Peter Maurer, virtually, of course, during the COVID-19 pandemic. We discussed the impact of COVID on conflict-affected communities, the situation in Yemen, Syria and Myanmar, and the need for IDC to continue to shine a light on conflict-affected contexts around the world, a commitment that I can say we continue to honour. In November last year, the committee met their regional director to Africa for a discussion on Sudan. In the last Parliament, ICRC submitted evidence for the inquiries into climate change, aid effectiveness, racism in the aid sector, and preventing sexual exploitation and abuse. These submissions were hugely helpful as the committee made its recommendations to government. Again and again, they have provided invaluable resource to Parliament on the application of international humanitarian law. This much-needed bill will allow the ICRC to continue to operate in the UK with its international mandate. It will provide the securities needed for them to continue this vital impartial work with the immunity from jurisdiction. And I hope this House gives the bill a safe passage.
I now call Liberal Democrat spokesperson Monica Harding.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I am pleased to welcome this bill and support the recognition of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and the International Committee of the Red Cross as international organisations. Madam Deputy Speaker, as Liberals, we are internationalists. This bill fits with Liberal Democrat policies of international cooperation and upholding international humanitarian law by supporting the strengthening of international bodies and organisations that seek to forward these aims. Anything that can be done in this fragile global environment that can strengthen global collaboration, we must support. Treating these bodies as international bodies would be testament to this House's shared commitment to international humanitarian law that we want practised even in the most fraught zones of conflict, and our commitment to good governance and promoting good governance in the world. To take first the International Committee of the Red Cross, this is an independent body that plays a crucial role in protecting civilian lives in the middle of conflict and war zones. Today, there are over 120 ongoing armed conflicts in the world, and its work is needed more than ever. The ICRC has been active over the last year in Ukraine, helping to ensure that over 4 million people had access to water, heat and electricity. It has worked in Sudan, distributing food assistance to over 42,000 people and helping with water purification, benefiting over 2 million people. And in Gaza, the ICRC has been supporting basic needs and medical equipment. It has engaged the parties of the conflict and reminded them of their responsibilities under international humanitarian law and worked to facilitate the release, transfer and return of hostages and detainees from both sides. It is important that we strengthen its ability to do this work without fear. This new designation represents merely us catching up with many of our peer nations. Over 110 states have now granted the ICRC relevant privileges and immunities, including every other member of the UN Security Council, in recognition of the committee's unique mandate, which demands, above all, that the committee be allowed to maintain its neutrality. The ICRC's history is singularly bound up with the history of the Geneva Conventions. The committee persuaded governments to adopt the first and original Geneva Convention 160 years ago this year. This treaty obliged armies to care for wounded soldiers, whatever side they were on, and introduced the Red Cross on the white background, the unified emblem for medical services for any and every side across borders and enemy lines. The committee's remit expanded alongside the successive Geneva Conventions and in 1949 expanded to include civilians. Honourable friends and members will acknowledge, given current conflicts, that the committee's obligation to civilians is as essential as it was 75 years ago. The UN estimated in 2022 that 87% of casualties resulting from hostilities were civilians. And in such zones, the International Committee of the Red Cross is often almost alone among agencies in coordinating and delivering aid at scale and, crucially, in having lines of communication with belligerents. For these reasons, the FCDO refers to the ICRC as an essential partner for achieving the UK's humanitarian goals, as well as our wish to see international humanitarian law upheld. Liberal Democrats believe in the universal conceptions of civilian rights asserted by the Fourth Geneva Convention and the additional protocols. In working across conflict zones with non-combatants, with prisoners, hostages and the wounded, the committee acts as a guardian of international humanitarian law. This status is only possible because the committee is understood to be neutral, applying universal rather than partisan principles. The privileges and immunities laid out in this bill include inviolability for its archives and premises, which will assure parties to conflict of the confidentiality of the committee's information and of its independence. They also include the testimonial and narrow criminal immunities, which will permit the committee staff to maintain the necessary conversations with prescribed groups, without which their most challenging work would not be possible. Neglecting to take these steps risks threatening the fundamental mission of the committee at a time when it is needed more than ever. The committee, as part of its mandate, is at the vanguard of clarifying and developing international humanitarian law. Sadly, there has been an increase of permissive interpretations of international humanitarian law. Without its perspective and experience, the analyses through which we protect those caught in conflict zones will be poorer. This bill also provides for international organisation status to be conferred upon the CPA, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, made up of 180 Commonwealth legislatures from 53 Commonwealth countries. Now seems a particularly fitting moment, as honourable members have pointed out, given that leaders are gathering now in Samoa for the 27th Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. The Commonwealth is a rare organisation, being a voluntary association of states bound not by economic or security ties, but by shared values, and even more so, shared aspirations. As the instrument through which aspirations and values are pursued, the Constitution of the CPA upholds shared principles of democracy, development, equality, human rights, and environmental protections. The CPA has promoted and strengthened parliamentary democracy since its establishment in 1911 and allows for parliamentarians across the Commonwealth to engage in dialogue and learn from each other. We support enhancing the status of the CPA by granting it protections and immunities comparable to that of the Commonwealth Foundation and the Commonwealth of Learning. In 2006, the CPA published its benchmarks, 87 indicators against which parliamentary democracies can be measured. These were updated in 2018 to include the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, which chimes with Liberal Democrats' commitment, as in our manifesto this year, to put the SDGs at the heart of international development policy. While we were disappointed that the Labour Party manifesto did not mention the SDGs, we have been encouraged that they were referenced in the International Development Minister's Chatham House speech last week, and I hope that commitment to the SDGs is something that all sides of the House are united on. The Commonwealth includes both the world's most populous democracy and its least. Since 2018, 33 jurisdictions have undertaken assessments using the CPA criteria, and many have subsequently participated in technical assistance programmes, multi-year programmes focused on strengthening institutions and building parliamentary capacity. With the new status granted as an international interparliamentary organisation, the CPA will enable it to sign the international agreements it has been limited from doing until now, hold Commonwealth governments to account for actions against parliamentarians, enable member parliaments better governance of the CPA, and participate fully in Commonwealth work, including at Jogee. And so, I am glad that this House is considering this bill designed to support the work of the CPA and ICRC by designating them as international organisations. This step will simplify the challenges they both face in working so widely across the globe as essential vehicles for delivery of international humanitarian aid and democracy, never more needed than now. And it will underscore our commitment to the Commonwealth, keep the CPA headquartered in the UK, and ensure that the ICRC remains secure in the UK. Anything this House can do to ease the execution of their work with such noble aims should be jumped at, and the Liberal Democrats support this bill.
Bambos, Charalambous.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I rise to support this second reading of this bill, which is long overdue and has, as we've heard, cross-party support. This bill has received unwavering support in both this parliamentary session and in the last Parliament, which is a testament to the importance that both sides of this House place on the intentions of this bill. The debate also comes in a timely manner, as we have heard, with the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting this week to address global security, environmental and social challenges affecting us all. The Commonwealth nations are united in their belief in the rule of law and the importance of democracy, and since its birth in 1911, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association has promoted those enduring values as the Commonwealth's parliamentary arm. With the threat of global conflict now more present than ever, the work of the CPA to protect, develop and advance parliamentary democracy is now more important than ever before. And it's therefore crucial that the CPA, which is currently limited by its status as a UK charity, can participate fully in the international community. And I'm pleased that this bill will address that for the following reasons. Firstly, it provides some 18,500 Commonwealth parliamentarians with the credibility and authority that they need to operate on the international stage. And by granting similar privileges and immunities to those bestowed upon comparable international organisations, this bill places the CPA on equal standing at international fora so that members have the required platform to address global challenges. This also means that the organisation will enjoy similar legal status to its parliamentary strengthening counterparts like the Interparliamentary Union in Switzerland, reinforcing its reliability as a preferred partner for legislature in capacity building. My second point relates to the organisation's scope, and I welcome the bill because it extends the potential breadth of the CPA's work by treating them like the other international organisations that the UK is a member. This will allow them to expand their programmes, projects and activities on parliamentary practice and procedure. The CPA, as a UK charity, is currently subject to restrictions under UK legislation on the charity sector. For example, it's limited in its ability to sign international conventions and pursue political purposes. It is therefore capped in its ability to fully promote the values set out in the Commonwealth Charter and to address the priorities of its membership. An example of its priorities is the recommended benchmarks for democratic legislature. These are 132 good governance indicators that Commonwealth legislators should measure themselves against, covering minimum standards on financial oversight, engagement with the media and political petitioning, to name but a few. This bill gives the CPA greater freedom to promote such good governance programmes throughout the Commonwealth nations. Furthermore, this bill is important in maintaining the UK's involvement in CPA and the Commonwealth. Its past two annual conferences saw the CPA's governing body decide to relocate its headquarters to a member state that would provide the recognition that it needs. If this could not be given in the UK, this bill doesn't just empower the organisation, it protects the UK's global influence by keeping the CPA based here so our parliamentarians can have an active role in promoting parliamentary democracy and good governance globally. Yeah. The second organisation that this bill focuses on, the International Committee of the Red Cross, does vital work to protect victims of violence around the world. With growing conflicts in Ukraine, Gaza, Sudan and elsewhere, the ICRC's work as an independent humanitarian organisation is crucial. This bill seeks to protect that independence. Clause 2 of the bill will provide for protected ICRC information to be exempt from any illegal disclosure requirement imposed by court or tribunal in civil proceedings or by statutory provision or rule of law, with exemptions for a court order in criminal proceedings. So this bill allows us to give the ICRC the guarantee that any information shared with the UK government is protected so that they can continue to do the crucial work in assessing victims of armed conflict. The ICRC operates under a long-standing method of confidentiality, and this means that they engage mainly in confidential and bilateral dialogues with states and other parties, and they expect states to respect the confidentiality of any information shared with them. Were this information to be made public, it would hamper the ICRC's ability to have confidential dialogue with and gain the trust of conflict groups. The ICRC needs to be perceived as a trustworthy organisation when seeking dialogue with all concerned actors so that they can have full access to all sides of the front lines and contested zones. Indeed, this allows them to continue to provide humanitarian assistance in conflict areas like Gaza and Sudan. For example, they have delivered 962 metric tonnes of medical equipment amidst crisis in Gaza, as well as providing food assistance to over 42,000 people during the conflict in Sudan. In addition to this, the bill will recognise the ICRC as an international organisation. Its mandate to act in times of global conflict is based on international humanitarian law under the Geneva Conventions of 1949. Over 110 states, including all other permanent members of the UN Security Council, have accorded the ICRC relevant privileges and immunities to those of an international organisation. The absence of privileges and immunities provided by the UK has resulted in significant operational challenges for the ICRC. So it's important that the UK follows its international partners. This would allow the ICRC to operate in the UK and manage its resources in a manner most beneficial to affected persons, preserving its principle of neutrality. This bill is a vital step in ensuring the CPA and the ICRC have the full confidence of the UK government to promote the values of democracy and the rule of law that we all share and provide humanitarian assistance to those who need it. And having recently been elected to the UK Executive Committee of the CPA, I look forward to working with other Commonwealth parliamentarians to further those values and promote the standards of good governance that are necessary to make democracy work in today's world. With the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting taking place in Samoa this week, it's important that the UK places itself at the heart of global diplomacy, and this bill signifies the intention to do so. This bill is long overdue, and in granting these privileges and immunities to the CPA and ICRC, it further secures their future and shows that the UK is back, playing an active and important role on the international stage.
Dame Karen Bradley.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And it's an honour to follow my honourable friend, who I have attended many interparliamentary events with, and I know is a very active participant in both the CPA, IPU, BIPA and everything else he can be involved in. So it's a great honour to follow him. I refer to my entry in the Register of Members' Interest before I start my comments, which will be short, because this, I think, is probably the third time that I have spoken in one of these debates. Definitely the second time in a second reading debate, because this is a bill that we have seen before, and I'm delighted that it has been brought back and that we will have the chance now to get it to royal assent, because it is something that is really vital. It's vital, actually, for the reputation of this place and for our view and our the work we do with the CPA UK, and I will restrict my comments to CPA UK, which is the and the CPA, which is the body to which I have most familiarity. On that note, I do want to pay tribute, as my honourable friend has done, to Maria Miller, who tried many, many times to get this bill through and was an enormous advocate and real true champion for CPA. And also to Ian Littlegranger, also late of this parish, who stepped into the role of chairing the CPA when the previous chair passed away very suddenly, and he stepped into the role with great aplomb, as you can all imagine, and did make certain commitments at the last Commonwealth Parliamentary Conference in Ghana, which is great that they will be fulfilled before the next Commonwealth Parliamentary Conference in New South Wales next month. Now, I first became aware of the work of the CPA when I was a minister, because CPA UK has a very specific role with regards to modern slavery and has ring-fenced funding from the FCDO to promote across the Commonwealth the work that we can do together to tackle this heinous crime. And in fact, I'm very grateful to be called now, because shortly I will be disappearing to go and speak on a panel on a seminar that the CPA UK is holding at this very moment on strengthening legislation to address modern slavery and supply chains and gender-based violence. So I'm delighted to be able to speak in this debate before I go and take part in the reality of the work that the CPA does, which is an incredibly powerful tool for all of us. And I have to say to everybody, if you haven't yet been involved in an interparliamentary group, please do so. You will make friends that are friends for life. You will learn about what's going on in the rest of the world. And you will meet people from other legislatures, not just national legislatures. The great advantage of CPA is that it involves all parliaments at all levels of CPA, of Commonwealth countries, which means that you get the chance to meet those from devolved parliaments, those from regional parliaments, provincial parliaments. And, you know, when we're in this place, all of us, we're very focused on what's happening. I don't think there's many people who outside Westminster are aware of what we're doing. But we're really, really focused on CPA and ICRC status. That is the focus of our attention, and it will be for some time to come this afternoon and beyond. But beyond that, people are looking at other things, and that is true in other parliaments. And last week at the IPU Assembly in Geneva, it was wonderful to meet parliamentarians from around the world and hear what they're doing, and hear what their focus is, and hear the challenges that they face, and learn that much of it is common. We really all do face the same challenges, but actually there are some unique things that other countries face that we really need to be aware of and working on and debating in this place. And that's where the CPA and the BGIPU and BIPA and the British American Parliamentary Assembly can bring parliamentarians together and give us that insight. So I'm absolutely delighted that this bill is here before us today. I support it wholeheartedly. I do hope that by the time we reach the next CPC next month, it has received royal assent and that the promises that Ian Littlegranger gave to that Assembly last year can be delivered on. And I wish the Minister all the best in his endeavours. Thank you.
Jazz Athwal to make his maiden speech.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Thank you for calling me to make my maiden speech, and can I congratulate and thank the Honourable Member for Staffordshire and Moorlands for speaking with such passion and with purpose, and really spoke with clarity and detail, and I thank her for that. Firstly, if I could turn to my maiden speech, I want to thank my neighbours, the great people of Ilford South, for entrusting me with the honour of serving them in this House. I know each one of us here served by the grace of God and the will of the people, and I will spend my life repaying the trust bestowed upon me by the great people of Ilford South. Madam Deputy Speaker, at just 7 years old, I travelled to Ilford from the Punjab. Not speaking a word of English, not knowing anyone aside my family, and yet Ilford gave me a home, an outstanding education, and opportunities to build a better life. Ilford gave me a community without whom I would not be standing here today. It was in Ilford that I first met the Honourable Member for Ilford North, and we both began our journey a decade ago together in local government. I will forever be grateful for his help, guidance and friendship, and feel immensely proud of his tireless work to reform our NHS and create a service fit for the future. Together with my predecessor, Mike Gapes, the member for Ilford North, and I successfully fought for our local hospital, King George, to save the A&E from closure, cementing an enduring friendship and a formidable reputation for Redbridge Labour as a campaigning tour de force to be reckoned with. Madam Deputy Speaker, Mike Gapes spent his parliamentary career speaking up for the marginalised communities, securing the future of our local NHS provision, and steadfastly serving our local communities, all while staying true to his values. And I endeavour to honour his legacy and continue his great work. Ilford South is a unique and inspiring place, a town people travel to from all across the world to call home. Since its formation in 1945, those eager to dedicate themselves to public service have fought for the honour to represent the people of Ilford South, including my predecessor, Sam Tarry. I'd like to thank Sam for his service to the people of Ilford and his work advocating for local access to essential public transport as Shadow Minister for Buses and Local Transport. My story is a story of Ilford South. Like so many of my neighbours, I was born overseas, raised speaking a different language, and arrived in Ilford seeking a better life. Ilford South's fantastic schools educated me. Our high streets businesses employed me, and our local communities inspired me to be ambitious for my family, for the future of our hometown, and for our great country. People travel from across the world to call Ilford home, because Ilford is a place of promise, a place of opportunity, and a place where communities lift one another up, celebrating our diversity as well as our shared experience. A place where a Sikh can be invited to share iftar with his Muslim brothers and sisters. A place where I can join in the annual chariot festival at Sri Selva Vinayanagar Temple, light a candle on the menorah during Hanukkah, mark the festival of Janmasthani at the Albert Road Mandir, and every year turn on the Christmas lights at Ilford Town Centre. As a member of this House, I'm determined to deliver on the promise of Ilford South to ensure families can find a welcoming home, safe streets, exceptional schools, and the opportunity to succeed. In Ilford South, our communities came together to save King George Hospital's A&E department, and now this Labour government will save our NHS, so hard-working healthcare professionals can deliver the life-saving care patients deserve. I will continue to lift up communities just as they once supported me, to grow from a frightened 7-year-old immigrant to a member of this House. It's thanks to the democratic process of this country that I stand here today, ready to serve my neighbours across Ilford South. In recent years, we've all been reminded that the security of democracy is not guaranteed across the world. Battles for free and democratic elections are hard fought, and freedom we enjoy must always be resolutely defended. The great work of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, promoting good governance and sharing best practice across the Commonwealth, is to be admired, and I'm pleased this debate recognises the need for a change in the association and the Committee of Red Cross's status to enable them to better fulfil their vital endeavours. Madam Deputy Speaker, my parents came from Pakistan with nothing. We came from India here with nothing, and it is my mission to repay my debt to my parents, to the people of Ilford South, to the place that adopted me, raised me, and gave me opportunities my parents could only dream of. Each day that I arrive at this place, I will never forget who sent me here, and I will not rest in my fight for my neighbours and for the bright future Ilford South deserves. Thank you.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Madam Deputy Speaker, what a pleasure it is to follow such a splendid maiden speech by the new Honourable Member for Ilford South. As a third-generation immigrant myself, whose family lived in the city of Swansea for 100 years, more or less exactly, I know precisely how he feels in terms of gratitude to a place in a new country that gave him every opportunity to develop his talents and his abilities to the point at which he deservedly finds himself in this place. I'm sure he will make maximum use of that opportunity, and I particularly welcome his warm reference to his predecessor, Mike Gapes, who served in this House for no fewer than 27 years and who was the epitome of moderate, patriotic Labour. He won respect on this side of the House as well as on his own side of the House, and it was sad that a point came when he felt at one stage he could no longer remain a member of the Labour Party, though I'm glad to see from his Wikipedia entry that he is back in the fold today. Now, this uncontroversial bill seeks to change the status of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and the International Committee of the Red Cross to convert each of them into what is known as a body corporate. These are sensible proposals which I broadly support. However, as stated during the Sir David Amess adjournment debate on the rising of the House on 12th of September, there is one other organisation with which I'm rather familiar and which requires the same change in status as the CPA and the ICRC to make it into a body corporate too. That organisation is the office which supports the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament, the ISC, and this bill presents us with the timeliest opportunity
to achieve that necessary change. Indeed, it is a perfect fit. So I trust that the House will bear with me while I explain the serious conflict of interest which has arisen, why that conflict matters to Parliament, and how it can easily be rectified with a very simple addition to this bill before the House today. For the benefit of newer members in the Chamber, I should explain that the ISC is a cross-party committee of both Houses of Parliament, created by statute in 1994. Under the Justice and Security Act 2013, the ISC was given the legal responsibility for overseeing the UK's intelligence community on behalf of Parliament. Yet Parliament's intent, as expressed in that Justice and Security Act, is currently being undermined. Right Honourable and Honourable Members may be surprised to learn that the ISC's office, with a very small number of staff, belongs to the Cabinet Office, despite the ISC overseeing certain sensitive organisations within the Cabinet Office. They would be right to be surprised, because that is indeed a fundamental conflict of interest, which is why at the time of the Justice and Security Act, the Cabinet Office was supposed to be only the temporary home of the ISC's office. Yet here we are, more than 10 years later, with the committee's staff still beholden to, vulnerable within, and unfairly pressured and even victimised by the very part of the executive the committee is charged with scrutinising and holding to account on behalf of Parliament. The executive should not be able to constrain and control the committee's democratic oversight on Parliament's behalf by exerting control over the ISC's small staff team to prevent them from doing their job independently. Such control means that part of the Cabinet Office can and does starve the team of resources, so that the ISC's staff are unable to fulfil the committee's legal responsibilities. That is in complete contravention and disregard of a clear ministerial undertaking given by the then Deputy Prime Minister, my right honourable friend, the member for Hertsmere, about vital extra resources for the ISC staff prior to the recent general election. Control by the Cabinet Office also means that they can stigmatise and penalise the ISC's staff, blaming them for the committee's robust scrutiny with damaging consequences for their future careers in the civil service. Such deplorable behaviour has included repeatedly downgrading highly positive assessments submitted by me as ISC chairman at the time of staff performance in recent years. In reality, the members of the ISC in the last Parliament valued the committee's staff very highly indeed, as I believe all members have since the committee was first established 30 years ago. We certainly found the arrangements which I've described to be wholly unacceptable. The ISC therefore formally resolved by a unanimous vote across all three political parties on the committee that it is essential for parliamentary democracy and its scrutiny system that the committee's office must move out from under the control of the executive, that is, from the Cabinet Office, and should instead be established as an independent body corporate with a link to Parliament rather than to the executive as at present. That unanimous decision was confirmed by members of the committee at its meeting on the 19th of March this year, following expert and authoritative external advice that it is indeed within the ISC's power to take such a step and to determine the suitable mechanisms for implementing it. This constitutional change, which the Cabinet Office has predictably attempted to ignore, is essential to protect the separation of powers. It's also extremely easy to achieve. It requires a very short amendment to the Justice and Security Act to change the status of the ISC's office. The amendment would establish the office as a body corporate to support the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament and safeguard the independence of the committee itself. I had hoped that the amendment would be included in the new legislative programme. Unfortunately, but unsurprisingly, in the committee's absence since Parliament was dissolved for the general election, the Cabinet Office has hitherto managed to block it. However, this is to underestimate the previous members of the committee from both sides of the House and in both chambers who are convinced that the committee's office cannot and must not continue to be controlled by the Cabinet Office. This bill, in seeking to change the constitutional status of the CPA and the ICRC and allow better provision for their staffing arrangements, is the ideal vehicle through which to achieve the same for the ISC's beleaguered office. It is the obvious place to include a short amendment to the Justice and Security Act to change the status of the ISC's staff organisation too. We mustn't pass up this opportunity. Parliamentary time is precious and there may not be another suitable vehicle during this Parliament. As a measure to secure democratic oversight, I'm confident that it should and would secure cross-party support in both houses. Prior to the election, both the then government and the then opposition seemed to accept that this reform was needed, which does rather beg the question why it has not yet happened. I intend returning to this issue at a later stage of the bill with a proposed amendment, and I trust that for the reasons set out that the House will support it. Having chaired the Intelligence and Security Committee for the past 4 years and served on it also throughout the 2010 to 2015 Parliament, I reiterate what I said in 2019 after more than 4 years as chairman of the Defence Select Committee. Namely, that it is better to stop while people wish you to carry on than to carry on until people wish you to stop. Hopefully, glad to have that endorsement. Hopefully, I can still be a friend of both committees on the floor of this chamber whilst giving support to my successors in office. It was as extraordinary as it was shameful that no Prime Minister saw fit to meet with the Intelligence and Security Committee during the entirety of the last Parliament, though to her credit, during her short time at number 10, Liz Truss did offer to do so. Perhaps the latest occupant of Downing Street will show greater respect towards a body which has consistently undertaken sensitive inquiries and produced reports of the highest quality and the soundest judgment over the past 30 years, largely because of the calibre and integrity of its professional director and her dedicated staff. Let us now do the right thing by them all. Thank you.
Adam Jogee.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's a pleasure to follow the member for New Forest East, and I enjoyed his detailed and comprehensive remarks. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak in this important debate on this important bill, and I want to start by paying tribute, Madam Deputy Speaker, to the member for Ilford for his maiden speech, sharing his story and the promise of our country. I'd like to also start by declaring my interest as co-chair of the Commonwealth All-Party Parliamentary Group, a role I was elected to before the summer recess, and my newly minted role as a member of the executive of the UK branch of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. Now, the Commonwealth is all about creating opportunities, Madam Deputy Speaker, none more so than today for my first opportunity to give a speech without a time limit. So I shall enjoy that. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome the Minister to his position. It's the first time I've had the opportunity to speak with him on the front bench. I'm looking forward to working with him and the Foreign Office team in the years ahead. I've known my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, for most of my life, and had the benefit of being his constituency twin during the election campaign. So he had the great pleasure of being able to visit Newcastle-under-Lyme and enjoy a warm hospitality. not least at the Victoria Pub on Brampton Road. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, this bill has been through the wars and was rudely interrupted, as we've heard from others, by the general election, and I'm very pleased that the government has so speedily brought it forward. Where we can work together and where we can make cross-party progress, we should, and we should do as often as we can. And I want to join the Shadow Minister in acknowledging her comments about the former member for Basingstoke, Dame Maria Miller. And I also want to acknowledge all CPA staff led by the excellent Sarah Dixon, who I believe may be watching the deliberations this afternoon. Now, the bill before us, Madam Deputy Speaker, is about our standing on the world stage, our role as a leader in the fight for human rights, for respect, for decency and for togetherness. And the bill specifically grants international status to both the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and the International Committee of the Red Cross, which, as we've heard from others, will enable both reputable and long-standing bodies to benefit from the immunities and privileges of all others, as the Minister pointed out in clauses 1 and 2. Now, these immunities and privileges include, as we've heard, also the power to confer legal capacities of a body corporate on the CPA and the ICRC, to grant the organisations, their information staff, certain privileges and immunities commensurate with their functional needs, to provide references to international organisations and general legislation, and from now on references to the CPA and the ICRC, and will also allow for certain confidential information. As ever, Madam Deputy Speaker, the United Kingdom must lead by example. So whilst this bill, as the Shadow Minister said, may feel technical in nature, and in some ways it is, there's a wider point here of our leadership at home and abroad, and that's why it's so important that we maintain the CPA headquartered here in the United Kingdom. This bill has my full support, and I hope, judging by the comments of both the Liberal front bench and the Shadow Minister, it will have the support right across the House later this afternoon. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, this may not be the most oversubscribed second reading debate since the general election, but that should not be misinterpreted as a lack of support for, faith in and commitment to the Commonwealth, its legacy and its potential. And with that in mind, Madam Deputy Speaker, and the fact that this bill will help improve our reputation enormously with our Commonwealth partners and friends, I would like to take a moment to talk about the Commonwealth and what it means for today's world, for people in Newcastle-under-Lyme and right across the global community. And as we look, Madam Deputy Speaker, to the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting taking place in the Pacific, this is an important and long overdue step being taken by the United Kingdom through this bill. In Samoa, heads of government, women, men and young people from across the Commonwealth will come together for an opportunity to share ideas, best practice, values and thoughts for moving our global family forward, and for making their deliberations mean something in each of our respective communities and nations. And this is important because our world is in a state of real flux. At once we seem ever more interconnected, but we feel like we're being driven further and further apart. Political leaders across the world see more interest in putting up barriers and walls rather than tearing them down. More interested in what divides us than what unites us, and no interest amongst some to bring people together. And that's a matter of deep concern to me, but also shows the power, Madam Deputy Speaker, and the importance of the Commonwealth family of nations. The Commonwealth is a voluntary organisation, as we've heard already, of 56 independent and equal countries, perhaps not in size of economy or population, but they are when they sit round the table, as the leaders engage and listen. Our Commonwealth family is made up of 2.5 billion people or thereabouts, and includes both advanced economies and developing countries, sun and snow, global north and global south, palm trees and oaks, kangaroos and cattle, and women, men and children, who all deserve a chance to get on in life, to succeed and to feel safe and secure. I will happily give way to my in-laws Member of Parliament in Southampton.
I thank the member very much. He makes the case about the international relationships, and the Right Honourable Member for Staffordshire Moorlands referenced the devolved assemblies. Can I also ask him to acknowledge the contribution of the CPA branches across all their devolved assemblies in Northern Ireland and Scotland and Wales? Indeed, I served as chair of the Northern Ireland branch of the CPA, and I now look forward to joining him as an executive member of the CPA branch here in Wales.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And it's a pleasure to have my genuine honourable friend from Southampton intervene. He makes an excellent point. He served honourably and nobly in the Northern Ireland Assembly, and the points he makes about the importance the CPA has in Northern Ireland and across our United Kingdom and the Commonwealth is well made. Now, as the member for Esher and Walton noted, 33 of the Commonwealth's members are small states, including many island nations like Jamaica, the land of my grandfather's birth. And there's something very important about the leaders of small islands and small nations being around the table with the leaders of countries like Singapore, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and yes, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. We all know that the Commonwealth's roots go back to the British Empire, and that's a complicated history for all of us, and we shouldn't forget, and we shouldn't airbrush out of the steps forward that this bill will help us deliver. We must embrace our history and our collective experiences. My grandfather came here to serve King Country on a British passport in the 1940s. We wouldn't have beaten the Germans on the beaches of Normandy or Gallipoli without the bravery and valour of young men, primarily, black, white and Asian, from across the Commonwealth, or the colonies as they were then. Today, any country can join the modern Commonwealth, with the last two countries to join being Gabon and Togo in 2022. Their admittance was interesting because neither had age-old colonial ties to the United Kingdom. Indeed, there was very little that bound them to Britain, but in many ways it's a step in the right direction. There is more to do on this, and I am very proud of my Zimbabwean roots, and it is a matter of deep personal sadness that a nation that once hosted the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in the presence of Her late Majesty now sits on the outside looking in. With membership comes responsibilities and expectations and standards, like any club or team one joins, which is why this bill is so important, and I hope that the discussion around Zimbabwe is given a thorough and detailed hearing when the leaders gather in Samoa. Madam Deputy Speaker, I am one of the few members of this House who can lay claim to representing the birthplace of a leader of a Commonwealth country. The 6th Prime Minister of Australia, Joseph Cook, started off in the Labour Party, ended up a Tory, was born and raised in Silverdale. I thought you'd enjoy that, Charlie. Was born and raised in Silverdale, in my constituency, and after leaving our shores for Australia, went on to hold the highest role in the land. It's a legacy we are very proud of in Newcastle-under-Lyme, and a couple of weeks ago I was at St Luke's Primary School in Silverdale, where there is a fantastic plaque that honours the memory of Cook and cherishes the ties between our community and Australia. This bill is important because I hope it heralds a change in British government policy. We can't just engage when it suits us. We can't just do it when we feel like it. We cannot and must not allow the bonds to fray, the contact to cease, nor the phone calls to go unanswered. Because we've seen many examples across Africa and the Caribbean, and increasingly in the Pacific, where the Chinese government has them on speed dial. And the perception, certainly mine and in many other parts of the world, is that the United Kingdom, for at least the last 30 years or so, has failed to effectively and properly seize the opportunities that the Commonwealth provides. I'm very pleased that the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary are both going to the Pacific. There are several competing demands on senior colleagues, on all of us, every day, and we know that. But as Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth always said, and I quote this pretty much every day myself, she had to be seen to be believed, and she was right. That's why it's so important for the Prime Minister to make the admittedly long journey. Our departure from the European Union was meant to lead to Global Britain, or a Global Britain agenda, and I urge my friend on the front bench to make sure that that agenda becomes a reality. And this bill and the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association helps us do that. This bill shows our allies and friends across the Commonwealth that we take our relationships and our responsibilities seriously, that we understand the example we must set, and we're determined to build a, as Gordon Brown would put it, renewed Commonwealth with a renewed purpose for new times. This bill, securing a second reading today, will also mean colleagues in this House, who, as my honourable friend from Southampton noted, engage with parliamentarians across the Commonwealth, through the CPA, as I will be in the period ahead, have something positive to say. And that's very important. The viability and future of the Commonwealth is on the line if we don't get this new relationship right. This new government has a lot to do to get our country back on track, and this must be part of it. Being good stewards at home, Madam Deputy Speaker, and good neighbours abroad isn't mutually exclusive. We must do both, and we can do that by supporting this bill.
I now call Jack Rankin to make his maiden speech.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to rise for my maiden speech today, and I think very appropriate to do so during debate on the Commonwealth of Nations. First of all, I'd like to pay tribute to the maiden speech of the Honourable Member for Ilford South. He talked passionately about the opportunity and community which Ilford had brought him, afforded to him, and his commitment to his people there. I'm sure he'll make a great contribution to this place. We share a set of values with our Commonwealth kin, Madam Deputy Speaker. The rule of law, parliamentary democracy, freedom of speech, property rights, innocent until proven guilty by a jury of our peers, all built on a shared constitutional heritage. Principles which, with my time in this House, I want to fight for, and of which my constituency is at the beating heart. Because the Windsor constituency is not just a series of beautiful towns and villages, although that is undoubtedly true, but it is one that encapsulates the glorious history of our constitution, the evolution of our parliamentary democracy, and the very best of our shared Commonwealth of Nations. My predecessor was a son of the Commonwealth, with a Ghanaian father and an English mother. Adam Afriyie came from a tough background, growing up on a council estate in Peckham, but became a successful tech entrepreneur and the first black Conservative Member of Parliament. Adam spent his years in Parliament campaigning against Heathrow's third runway, and that is a campaign which I will be continuing, as well as supporting many good local causes, including children's charity Sebastian's Action Trust. I also appreciated Adam's work on FinTech and his role as the longest-serving chair of the Parliamentary Office of Science and Technology. As someone with a mathematics and physics academic background, it is clear to me that this place needs more of a quantitative and scientific approach.
Hear, hear.
Above all, Adam is a good man and a person I'm proud to call a friend. I wish him and his family all the best for the future. Clearly, Windsor's link to the royal family is self-evident. The Conqueror first built the castle, and the royal house proudly carries our name. But few know that the Windsor constituency was the home of monarchs long before the arrival of the Norman yoke. Old Windsor was an important palace of Saxon kings, documented as a defended royal manor in Edward the Confessor's time. But evidence suggests royal connections in existence since at least the 9th century. William the Conqueror chose the site for Windsor Castle on a strategically important position high above the key medieval route to London on the River Thames. It was part of a ring of motte and bailey castles around London, each a day's march from the city and the next, allowing for easy reinforcements. The first king to use Windsor Castle as a royal residence was William's son, Henry I. Perhaps he was attracted by the proximity of the Royal Hunting Forest, then Windsor Forest, which is now Windsor Great Park, in the centre of my constituency. I represent most of the communities around it, including Ascot, Sunninghill and Sunningdale, where my wife Sarah and I have made our own family home with our sons Edward and Christopher. It was Henry's great-grandson John who was besieged by the barons in 1214 and signed the Magna Carta the following year. North of the river in Wraysbury or south on Runnymede Meadows is lost to time. Whichever the true site, both are in the Windsor constituency thanks to the most recent boundary changes, and we welcome Runnymede Meadow into the patch with the Surrey villages of Englefield Green and Virginia Water, as well as the east of Langley in Slough. Whether Wraysbury or Runnymede, what remains undeniable is the propensity for there to be too much water in both of these places. One of the things I will be advocating in this place is proper flood defences for Datchet, Wraysbury, Horton and Old Windsor. When the River Thames scheme is built, as is currently envisaged, these villages are disgracefully the only part of the Thames from Taplow to the North Sea which remain materially undefended. What was proposed as Channel 1 of the River Thames scheme must get funded centrally as national strategic infrastructure. And this House will be hearing from me again on this topic, I assure you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In the handful of weeks I have been here, Madam Deputy Speaker, I have already lost count of the times this place has been incorrectly referred to as the Mother of Parliament, misquoting John Bright. It is England which Bright referred to as the Mother of Parliament. In that speech, Bright was arguing for what became the Reform Act of 1867, which enfranchised, for the first time, part of the urban, male, working class from which I hail. England is the Mother of Parliament because of the principles established in Anglo-Saxon England that, yes, we owe our allegiance to His Majesty the King, then in Old Windsor, now in New Windsor, but within a framework that protects our ancient individual liberties as articulated in Magna Carta. This heritage is proudly ours, but the Saxon Great Councils, which started to be called parliaments by the 13th century, and the principles underpinning them, amongst other things, that the king could only make law and raise taxation with the consent of the community of the realm, now belongs to the whole Commonwealth and to the wider free world. And that concept, to raise taxation only with the consent of the community of the realm, should give the new government pause for thought. And I recommend it as a good Conservative instinct. Because in this House, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Treasury bench, the Crown, should be cautious of levying taxation, especially if punitive or excessive, without gaining wide common counsel. And my counsel would be, as this new government raises taxes in breach of its manifesto commitments, that taxation will only gain wide consent if, and only if, it leads to a material improvement in the quality of public services. And this will not happen without quite radical public sector reforms to drive productivity improvements, which I seriously urge the government to consider. Tax without proper consent is something governments over the years have come a cropper over, most famously the British in North America in the 18th century. I do hope our American cousins may rejoin the Commonwealth one day, and it is often they that remember our shared constitutional heritage the keenest. The Magna Carta Memorial erected in my constituency in 1957 was done so by the American Bar Association, for example, who alongside ourselves and our Commonwealth kin are the beneficiaries of this great legacy. There is an extraordinary wealth of cultural and historical riches tied to the history of our great country, originating in my constituency. And I assure you, ma'am, I will be bringing this House's attention to this on many occasions in due course. Whether that's the foundation of Eton College in 1440, the foundation of Royal Holloway University over 170 years ago by Victorian social pioneers who founded one of the first places in Britain where women could access higher education, or the establishment of Ascot Racecourse in 1711 when Queen Anne found a flat expanse of heathland which she thought would be perfect for racing horses, and that tradition continues over 330 years later. And I will say to members opposite, particularly the new ministers, it is a fantastic place for a freebie.
They know. They know.
Please do see my updated Register of Interests next month. Or whether that's the foundation of Combermere Barracks in 1796 and Victoria Barracks in 1853, making Windsor a proud double garrison town. We owe our armed services so much on protecting the legacy on which I'm talking. We will remember them. But of course, none of this compares to the events of 1996 with the foundation of the great institution of Legoland. What I cannot do, Madam Deputy Speaker, is give my maiden speech without turning to the House of Windsor, which is, of course, the name of our British Royal House and the reigning house of our brothers and sisters in the other 14 Commonwealth realms. In Windsor, we have enormous pride that King George V proclaimed that our family, our house and family, should be styled and known as Windsor. It was felt inappropriate in the First World War for the royal family to be called Saxe-Coburg-Gotha as London was being bombed by aircraft of the same name. It was thought that Windsor sounded necessarily regal and English-sounding, and I wholeheartedly agree. We have now seen our fifth monarch of the House of Windsor. I'll bet it is sometimes better we forget about the second. They've all made Windsor their home, but few monarchs will be more associated with Windsor than Her late Majesty of blessed memory, Elizabeth, who made Windsor her principal weekend retreat. Indeed, she made it her home. But retreating was, of course, something our late Queen very rarely did. Indeed, her great passion was the Commonwealth. On her 21st birthday in 1947 in South Africa, she dedicated her life to the service of the Commonwealth when she famously said, "I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong. And didn't she just? She was the living embodiment every day of the model of Christian service and of the history and continuity of this country and its constitutional monarchy, the very essence of our great nation. Throughout her reign, she was, as the then member for Uxbridge and South Ruislip said on her passing, the keystone in the vast arc of the British state. But she was more than that. She was head of state, yes, but she was also head of the nation, and more widely, the head of our family of nations, deeply understanding the role she had been called to in the context of a millennium of constitutional development, lots of which is local to my constituency, but is relevant to free people the world over. Madam Deputy Speaker, I come from a much more modest background, but all of us in this House, like Windsor's Elizabeth the Confessor, will do well to appreciate that we are but the momentary trustees of our country. As Burke said, society is a contract between those who are living, those who are dead, and those yet to be born. Yes, we have a responsibility to our constituents today, but we have a shared inheritance of our history, our great parliamentary democracy, and we all have a duty to uphold the great traditions of our past in order to safeguard its future.
Yeah. Lillian Jones to make her maiden speech.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a pleasure to follow the Honourable Member for Windsor and his contribution to the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and International Committee of the Red Cross debate. It does not need saying how important the work is of both those organisations. I've listened to many honourable members deliver their maiden speeches in this House and have been struck by all their excellent contributions. But I stand before you today with immense gratitude and a profound sense of responsibility. It is the greatest honour for me to have been elected to this House to represent the people of Kilmarnock and Loudoun, a place where I have called home for nearly 20 years and have been a local councillor serving the ward Kilmarnock West and Cross House for 12 of those years. I moved to Kilmarnock after meeting my partner Nettie. We've been together ever since, and she's my best friend, my anchor, and I just don't know what I'd do without her. Yeah. I want to extend my love and my thanks to my family for their everlasting support and encouragement, and thinking today of my Auntie June, only 10 years older than I, whom we said goodbye to just 6 days before the election. But I know she'll be watching over me with my gran and Arthur. Arthur, who is my granda, and I fondly remember as a child I would call him by his name, which just stuck. And as you can imagine, this raised curiosity amongst the teachers at my school, who would always inquire if Arthur was my gran's boyfriend, much to my gran's amusement. As they look down on me, I hope I make them proud. To my friends, my colleagues who gave up every spare moment to help me, my friend Maureen, the Labour Group Leader on East Ayrshire Council, a woman like no other, who invested time and energy in me and has mentored me since my first election to East Ayrshire Council in 2012, but, despite her own personal challenges, was determined to do all that she could to get me here to this place and play a huge part in my campaign. And to Barry, who is known affectionately to be our local stato genius, he kept us well drilled and well informed, and boy did that pay off, a 5,000 majority. I would not be standing here today if it were not for the contributions of those who believed in me and supported me throughout this journey, and I thank every one of them. I want to pay tribute now to my immediate predecessor, Alan Brown, who was first elected to this House in 2015 and was committed to working hard for his constituents throughout his time in Parliament. I wish Alan and his family well for the future. In 1945, Clarice Shaw was the first woman elected to this place to represent the people of Kilmarnock on a platform of jobs for all, industry in the service of the nation, public ownership, a welfare state from cradle to grave, and a new national health service. Some 57 years later, I took up post in our national service, and was later privileged to join a team of dedicated colleagues who helped shape me into the person that I am today. It was and still is an honour to have been part of the Hospital at Night team, first launched in Glasgow in 2007, and to have forged many friendships that will last a lifetime. I'm thinking today of my former NHS colleagues, and I want to pay tribute to all members of the team who selflessly did their duty throughout the coronavirus pandemic and continue to do so in sometimes very challenging circumstances. Now, Clarice was a tireless campaigner for equality, an unwavering agitator for peace and a dedicated socialist member of Parliament. Her legacy serves as a beacon of hope and inspiration for all of us who believe in the power of collective action and social justice. But sadly, just days after Clarice had been sworn in, she became seriously ill and was unable to return to Parliament to deliver her maiden speech. And in October 1946, Clarice stood down and sadly died a few days later. But as a working class woman elected to this House, I reflect on Clarice Shaw's contributions, and I am inspired to carry forward her vision into today's world, where it is just as relevant now as it was in 1945. A vision where peace prevails over conflict, cooperation triumphs over division, and equality is not just an aspiration, but a reality for every citizen, and of course ensuring our National Health Service will be there when people need it most for future generations. Now, the second woman elected to represent Kilmarnock and Loudoun was Cathy Jamieson in 2010, but by this time she'd already been a parliamentarian for 11 years within Scottish Parliament. Her wealth of knowledge and experience saw her appointed to the official opposition front bench in 2011 to serve as the Shadow Economic Secretary to the Treasury. Now, Cathy will be a hard act to follow, but I will do my absolute best. Cathy is also arguably Kilmarnock Football Club's biggest fan, and I was delighted to learn the club had won the 2024 Best Kept War Memorial competition for their satellite garden at Memorial, with thanks to Kilmarnock's branch of the British Royal Legion. The British Royal Legion Scotland and the club ambassador Raymond Montgomery. My constituency is not only famous for having the oldest professional football club in Scotland, or its famous sons, such as Nobel Prize winner John Boyd Orr, born in Comores in 1880, nor Andrew Fisher, the 5th Prime Minister of Australia, born in Cross House 1862, or even Sir Alexander Fleming from Darvel, who discovered penicillin. It may interest the House to know, particularly this month, that in Killie we are unique as we celebrate Halloween before anyone else in the country. In fact, this year is even more unusual, as we celebrate Halloween before the clocks go back, something that cannot happen in the rest of the country. Now, on the last Friday of October, Halloween comes to life, supporting our local economy, with wains, young and old, in fancy dress, out in the streets, trick-or-treating, and over recent years this has become a favourite date in the calendar for communities across the constituency. And it's fantastic to see so many schools, volunteers, businesses and organisations such as Kilmarnock Community Fire Station who all put effort, energy and pride into making Halloween such an exciting time for so many children across the towns and villages of my constituency. To conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, I am shaped by the people who have loved, mentored, took a chance and believed in me. I stand before you all today a proud public servant with a combined 34 years of public service to date. Being in the service of people is when I am at my best. This is who I am. I know my life and work experiences will serve me well in this role as Member for Kilmarnock and Loudoun. Thank you.
David Munday.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's a great honour to serve under your stewardship for the first time in a debate, and it's a great honour to follow the Honourable Member for Kilmarnock and Loudoun. I lived in her constituency in Scotland's Moscow for a number of years, and it wasn't quite a socialist republic at that time, but my children also attended Fenwick Primary School, and I have many, many happy memories of her constituency. I was also inspired by the Honourable Gentleman for Ilford South story, which should be inspiring to everyone who comes
to this country and the opportunities that are available to grasp. And I very much enjoyed my honourable friend for Windsor's maiden speech at a tour de force on English history, which I was not fully familiar with. I don't know whether that will help him in his service on the Scottish Affairs Select Committee, because the one thing we have in common is that when I was a new member of this House, I was required to serve on that committee for 5 years, and it was indeed a learning experience. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to obviously speak in favour of this bill, and I want to concentrate my remarks on the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. I was particularly pleased that this Minister is taking the bill forward, because I know that he has played a very positive part in the workings of the association and been part of many delegations previously, which I have had the opportunity myself. And like the member for Newcastle-under-Lyme, South Antrim and Ilford, and Southgate and Wood Green, I was very pleased to be elected to the executive of the CPA, which will meet for the first time in its new guise this afternoon, hopefully, after this debate has concluded. I think it's extremely important that we understand the significance which Commonwealth countries placed on this change. It's all very well to have a discussion about the procedural niceties, but this issue was impacting on the reputation of the United Kingdom within the Commonwealth. And I have twice led delegations to South Africa. This issue was top of the list of issues to be discussed by the Speaker of the South African Parliament. And when the Speaker of the Ghanaian Parliament visited this country, this was the top issue on their agenda. And this issue impeded the discussion of other issues in terms that we might want to raise. So it was absolutely vital that this impediment to a discussion be removed, because I think, as one or two other speakers have touched on, particularly I think the honourable gentleman from Newcastle-under-Lyme, there are malign forces at work. And when we were in South Africa, we were attacked by the Economic Freedom Fighter Party as neo-colonialists. And this, the structure of the International Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, was given as one of the reasons as to why we were neo-colonialists, because the organisation wasn't a full-standing international organisation, it was an English charity. And they used that, to further their arguments. So it's not just a nice thing to do, it's a vital thing to do in order to ensure that we can be fully participative and respected in discussions. And if we want to raise difficult issues, and there are difficult issues to raise in the Commonwealth, particularly the assault on the LGBT community in many Commonwealth countries, we want to raise those issues, but we can't then be confronted, well, what are you doing about this issue that's important to us? So it's really, really important that we're taking it forward. Undertakings, as we have heard, were given at the last Commonwealth Parliamentary International Conference, and I do want to join with others in paying tribute to colleagues Ian Liddell-Granger, who had stepped in to be the head of the International Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, having been the chair of the UK Association when the incumbent passed away suddenly. And Ian, as those who knew him will appreciate, could have been a diplomat, I think, in another life, and was able, he was able to assure those present at that something would be done in the UK, that the changes would be made. And Maria Miller, in her usual tenacious way, sought to do everything possible to bring those measures forward. I was personally disappointed that the bill was not in the King's speech in the last government, because it was considered to be too niche, whereas various things that I would have considered, or my constituents would have considered niche, appeared in that King's speech. However, Maria pursued the bill through the other channels and got so very, very close to it being enacted. So I am delighted that the new government has taken it forward. I'm delighted that it got through the House of Lords without undue difficulty, and I hope that, although we've heard of other issues to be raised round the bill, that it will be able to complete a straightforward parliamentary passage, because not only do we have the Commonwealth Leaders event in Samoa, we have in 2 weeks' time the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Conference in New South Wales. And it will be very important, and particularly to me, as I have been tasked with reporting to that conference what is happening with this bill, that I can report positively that it has passed today the second reading, that we've heard across the chamber that it has widespread and cross-party support, and that the government has the impetus behind it to deliver the bill and royal assent as soon as is possible. So that's the message I hope and I believe I can take to the conference. The final point which I'd like to say to the Minister is the CPA UK branch is an asset to the government. And the government does need, and FCDO in particular, do need to work more closely with the branch, because MPs on delegations can be a soft power source that government can't be. Yeah. And what I think many members who've been on delegations will have found is that posts, consulates, embassies, high commissions have welcomed the visits by MPs, because MPs are able to raise issues or ask questions, or they themselves are able to ask questions or issues that they would not otherwise be able to do if it was a formal ministerial event. So I say, going forward, work with our CPA UK branch so as we can work as effectively as we can on behalf of the United Kingdom and deliver some of those soft power benefits. Thank you.
Shadow Minister Alicia Kearns.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With the leave of this House and with thanks to all those members who contributed today, I wish to reiterate our support on this side of the House for this bill. I also want to repeat my tribute to my right honourable friend, the former member for Basingstoke, Dame Maria Miller, for her unending work to promote this bill, and to my noble friends Baroness Anley and Lord Ahmed for their respective roles. It shines a positive light on this place that a private member's bill can be introduced, supported by a Conservative government and then reintroduced by a new Labour government. And I hope that we can see it complete its passage into law with the same spirit of cooperation. Now, turning to the debate today, it is a delight to serve opposite the Honourable Gentleman. He has a genuine passion for the Commonwealth and a commitment to building those friendships across the world. And I'm sure that he will continue to do all he can to build those friendships and make sure that the Commonwealth goes from success to success. Turning to the chair of the International Development Committee, she set out the value but also the joy that the CPA brings. And when it came to the ICRC, she was absolutely right. There is an organisation of hope, but that its losses and those that they have lost in the cause and the work they are doing demonstrate just how important the ICRC is, and therefore the work that they are doing, that we support them today. I'd also like to thank her for reminding me that I too should thank them for all the submissions they made to the Foreign Affairs Committee when I was chair of that committee over the last few years. Turning to the Liberal Democrat spokesperson, she had an encyclopedic knowledge of the ICRC, where I have to say I learnt many things that I was not aware of before this debate, so I thank her for that. Turning then to my right honourable friend for Southgate and Wood Green, I think his speech today demonstrated how important the CPA is and testament of that work, but also he is a representation today of the importance of the CPA for what it does for this chamber, and that is bring people together across the chamber to build friendships that matter. Because whilst the chamber often appears to be combative and frankly rude to some extent in the way that we speak to each other, behind the scenes it is vital that we have those relationships so we can get things done, and I'm grateful to count him as a very good friend. Turning to the Honourable Lady for Staffordshire, Moorlands, who I'm sure is rushing back to the chamber in a frenzy from her meeting with the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, it is quite impressive for her to make the same argument so cogently for a third time and to find a way to structure it so very differently. But I would like to pay tribute to her work on modern-day slavery. It is exceptional. It demonstrates the importance of the work that the CPA does, and I know that she has made a demonstrable difference to the way in which Commonwealth countries around the world have tackled modern-day slavery within their own countries. Turning to the member for Ilford South, I congratulate him on making his maiden speech. It is quite clear that he has a passion for the home his communities gave him, and he has clear aspirations for the communities he serves, and I wish him every success in delivering on those aspirations. The member for New Forest East, the former chair of the Intelligence Select Committee, set out his concerns for the freedoms and protections of the committee staff, ensuring that scrutiny is always at the forefront of his mind. I'm sure he was heard by the honourable member opposite, who I'm sure even more excited were his staff from the Foreign Office in the box, the news that there will be an amendment coming to the next hearing of this. We on our side will of course review his amendment very closely. He knows how closely in my own heart I hold the importance of scrutiny, and it was very interesting to hear from him the challenges that he faced as the chair over the last few years. Turning to the member for Newcastle-under-Lyme, he spoke of the family of the Commonwealth, although I suspect that perhaps in preparing for today's debate he accepted a challenge to try and get the word kangaroo into Hansard, so I congratulate him on doing just that. Turning to the member for Windsor, his maiden was also typical in the tribute that it paid to his predecessor. It is clear that he is going to be a passionate campaigner for civil liberties and low taxes during his time in this House. But I may gently suggest, Madam Deputy Speaker, that he may find his declared campaign to prevent a third runway at Heathrow at odds with the CPA's own demands on the airport, which are rather significant. So he may have to come to terms with that before he applies for any future delegations. Turning to the lady for Kilmarnock and Loudoun, I apologise in advance if that was not accurately pronounced, but the gratitude that you demonstrated to those who have supported you to come to this place was evidently heartfelt, and she brought the history of her constituency to life in her maiden speech. Turning now to my friend, the Honourable Member for Dumfriesshire, I'm getting there. He demonstrated so well the courtesies of this House in his contribution, and it is so important that as we move forward as a new Parliament that we do not forget those small courtesies, whether it be paying tribute to your predecessor, whether it be recognising the contributions of other members in your own speech, and I thank him for doing that. But he also raised the importance of the CPA when it comes to the challenges and disagreements that we have within that family, because like all families within the Commonwealth there are disagreements. And I know that he has been vocal in his efforts, particularly on global LGBT rights. I myself have been able to use the CPA family as an opportunity to flag my concerns when there have been attacks on LGBT rights globally and to try and raise those, also on women's rights, but also on the way in which sometimes national security legislation can be perverted or misused for the interests of individuals. So actually the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, although we talk about it in such a positive light, is also an important vehicle for challenge within our own communities. He also set out the importance of this bill to the Commonwealth, and I congratulate him on his re-election, and I'm glad that when he goes forward to the Commonwealth meeting, he will hopefully be able to confirm that at least today it has passed, as that seems to be the will of the House in today's discussion, although of course I would never prejudge any vote, and that it is making progress through the Houses. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and International Committee of the Red Cross do vital work. The CPA furthers the aims of the Commonwealth Charter to the development of free and democratic societies. It allows us to share best practice across borders, learn from one another, connect with like-minded colleagues in the Commonwealth, sometimes not so like-minded, and together strengthen our democratic resilience in an increasingly volatile world. The ICRC, as the Honourable Lady, Chair of the International Development Committee said, is often the last line of humanity, reaching the most vulnerable when others cannot and are administrating life-saving aid. Each is staffed and supported by hard-working and upright people trying their best to make a positive impact and etch out a brighter future from our stormy present. Now, whilst this bill may seem to address minor issues in comparison to some which pass through this House, it is nonetheless absolutely vital for not just us but for our Commonwealth partners around the world, many of whom I'm sure will be watching today's debate. The legal challenges within it strengthen the foundation on which both the work of the CPA and the ICRC rely. And whilst this bill solves two problems, though my honourable friend, the member for New Forest, will attempt to make it solve three, its real value is in the many opportunities it will create. It will be up to government to grip these challenges with both hands. They will have our support because we on these benches will always stand steadfast behind the Commonwealth and the Commonwealth family. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Minister Stephen Doughty.
With the leave of the House, Madam Deputy Speaker, can I first say it's a pleasure to see you in the chair as well. I think for the first time since I've been in the chamber. We've been opponents and sometimes allies at others, but genuinely it's a real pleasure to see you and welcome you to your place as one of our Deputy Speakers. And I want to thank first members from all sides for their insightful and valuable contributions today. And it's very, very clear that the work and values of both organisations are highly regarded by all members and that the legislation has support, I hope, and not to prejudge a vote, but has support from across all sides. And as I noted earlier, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is of course not the first time that this House has considered forms of this legislation, so we're all pleased to see it back again. In fact, during the second reading in the other place, my noble friend Baroness Chapman noted that she thinks that this bill is the first to receive a second reading in this Parliament under a new government, and I think it's now the first bill to receive a second reading in both houses. So could it be the first to gain His Majesty's signature? I wonder. But I certainly hope that can provide the answers that my right honourable friend opposite was hoping for before the conference. I want to thank firstly the Shadow Minister for her kind words and welcome her and the opposition's warm support and indeed her tribute to the past proponents of the bill. I also welcome her comments about the Commonwealth. I think we have much in agreement on this, and particularly what she spoke about the emphasis on the friendships, the best practice that we can share amongst each other. Also her tributes to His Majesty the King, and indeed a number of members referenced her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II for her decade of service and engagement, particularly with the Commonwealth, and I think that's recognised by all sides. And equally her references to the work of the ICRC and tribute that she paid to them and their staff, and particularly she mentioned their work in relation to Nagorno-Karabakh. She asked me a number of questions, which I will try and answer a number of them, and if I don't get them all I will obviously be very happy to write to her. But I think she asked me specifically about the funding to the ICRC, and just to be clear, His Majesty's Government provides 48 million each year as core unrestricted funding and is on track to provide at least an additional 80 million this year in direct contributions to the ICRC's work around the world. She and indeed other honourable and right honourable members raised the importance of the FCDO working with the CPA as well, and I am certainly keen, and certainly it would be my hope that all of our high commissions and embassies would provide a very warm welcome to delegations and indeed support the work, as I think the points we made about the benefits that can provide in terms of soft power, in terms of representing this place in its broadest sense, and all of our expertise and traditions, I think is absolutely well met. She made some much wider points about the Commonwealth, and indeed honourable and right honourable members did too. We attach great importance to our membership of the Commonwealth, which of course is a vibrant network of 2.5 billion people united in the pursuit of freedom, peace and prosperity. And we fundamentally believe, Madam Deputy Speaker, that a modern, cohesive and effective Commonwealth can play an important role in delivering progress on UK priorities across the globe, and whether that's in the sphere of democracy, whether that's in the sphere of common values, in defending the rights of women and girls and minority communities, whether that is in relation to dealing with climate change and the energy transition, the particular challenges faced by small island states, which was mentioned as well. All of these are key issues that we're going to work on together, along with growth and economic development, because of course the Commonwealth's 56 members include some of the world's fastest growing economies, and it's vital that we partner with them for their benefit and for our benefit and for our global benefit. And it's absolutely important that these issues will be discussed among many others at the Jogee meeting in Samoa. I want to pay tribute also to the chair of the International Development Committee, my good friend, the Honourable Member for Rotherham, and particularly her support, and indeed the tribute that she paid particularly to the ICRC, Madam Deputy Speaker, and particularly recognise what she said about the loss of their workers in current conflicts, but also in many others in the past, and the resilience and bravery of those who work in such trying circumstances, I think, is saluted by all of us across the House. I thank the Honourable Member for Esher and Walton, and welcome her to her place, and thank her for her party's support for this bill. And she rightly pointed to the example of other countries and why we need to follow suit. I want to assure her, Madam Deputy Speaker, of this new government's commitments to international law, to the multilateral system, to humanitarian principles, and also to the sustainable development goals. And indeed, my noble colleague Lord Collins and others will be speaking about these matters in due course, and she quite rightly referenced the speech of the Development Minister, my right honourable colleague for Oxford, which she gave recently. I want to congratulate my honourable friend, Madam Deputy Speaker from Southgate Wood Green, on his election. Indeed, all the members who've been elected to the CPA executive, and I thank him for his work and his support for this bill. The Right Honourable Member for Staffordshire Moorlands, I know she had to attend the important CPA event, and she rightly paid tribute to Maria Miller and Little Granger. She also highlighted the important work on modern slavery, and I wish her well with her panel today. She's absolutely passionate, like me, about the personal relationships we can develop, Madam Deputy Speaker, and also, as she and others referenced, the importance of the CPA in relation to devolved administrations. And actually, the first CPA conference I attended was actually, ironically, in the Senedd, in my own constituency in Cardiff South and Penarth, and brought together devolved administrations along with the UK and other members, indeed the overseas territories, which I now have responsibility for. And that learning and that sharing and that friendship and understanding of our different ways of working, but our common challenges, was hugely important. I want to pay particular tribute. We had some fantastic maiden speeches, firstly from my honourable friend from Ilford South, and his passionate description of his journey, Deputy Speaker, from Punjab to Ilford, the place of promise that he referred to, the community and the home that he found and has contributed to, and indeed his passion for his diverse and dynamic community, which has many similarities to my own, was very inspiring. And I also noted his pledges on health and the government's commitments on reforms to our NHS and his own campaign for King George Hospital, and I thank him for his excellent maiden speech. My honourable friend opposite from New Forest East always makes important points. I heard very clearly what he had to say, and he knows I take a keen interest in these matters as well, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would gently suggest to him that, as he knows, the clerks have particularly strong rules around the scope of bills, and it may be that an amendment he wants to suggest may not be in the scope of this bill. That is obviously for them to opine on, but obviously I hear his remarks. I will certainly take them away. There is obviously a stark difference between the ISC situation that he describes and the CPA and ICRC. I will give way to him.
I just urge him, when the government is considering the political dimension of what's being proposed, that he should have consultations with the noble Lord West of Spithead, who is his own party's representative on the previous ISC, and also with the new Lord Beamish, formerly Kevin Jones of this parish, who likewise has firmly committed to the sort of measure that I'm proposing.
Well, I certainly heard his remarks, and he mentioned some very well-respected noble friends in another place, and I will certainly make sure that colleagues across government hear his remarks today, and also his request for the ISC to meet with the Prime Minister. I'll make sure I take that away, although you'll know his diary is incredibly stretched. My honourable friend from Newcastle-under-Lyme, he was trying to take the chance for a lengthy speech, he said. The whips will probably teach him not to do that too often, but actually he made a fantastic contribution, and I thought some really thoughtful insights on the importance of the Commonwealth and its future, and particularly in that world where we are contested with autocratic and repressive states who would seek a very different future for the world. I think the Commonwealth provides a set of values and principles that we can all unite around, and indeed his own family history, and also he noted the Commonwealth contribution in the 2 world wars, which I think is something that we regularly need to remember, particularly as we come up to the season of remembrance. The honourable member, the new member for Windsor, also made an excellent maiden speech. I, like many other members, know his constituency very well. I've sung at Royal Holloway. I've visited the Runnymede fields. I've attended a conference actually on Ukraine recently in Windsor Castle itself, and his constituency is a home of many and varied activities, from the cultural to the historic. His passion for physics, I once wanted to be a physicist myself until my English teacher told me to go into politics, but absolutely the contribution that science and mathematics can make to this house is absolutely key, and of course the royal history of his seat is well known, but I want to welcome him into the house and thank him for an excellent speech. And my honourable friend from Kilmarnock and Loudoun, not only was it a heartfelt tribute, Madam Deputy Speaker, to the family and friends and campaigners who brought her to this place, and her own clear commitments to public service, but her warm tributes to her predecessors, including Clarice Shaw, but also Cathy Jameson, who I knew well when I first came into this place 12 years ago, were very well met. Cathy ensured that I got a tour around Killy Football Club when I was in her constituency at one point, and she might not know, but there is a connection, very direct connection, with my own constituency in Cardiff South and Penarth. Loudoun Square is at the heart of my own constituency of Butetown, referencing the very strong links between the coal and shipping industries of Cardiff with the west coast of Scotland, and so that connection is deep and abiding, and I think she spoke with passion about the huge community assets and strength in her own community, and I wish her well in this place. And last but not least, my rival friend from Dumfriesshire, Clydesdale and Tweeddale, made some very important remarks, some kind remarks to me. Congratulate him to his election to the executive. The significance of this change is understood by the government. It's why we want to get this through. And he rightly highlighted some of the challenges we see around the Commonwealth. I'm glad he raised the challenges, particularly for the LGBT plus community. He knows I take those issues very, very seriously, and have taken advantage of my time with the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association in the past to raise those concerns too. And these are issues that I and other ministers take very, very seriously. Madam Deputy Speaker, with that, I want to conclude by saying I am very, very well aware not only of the excellent work the ICRC do, but also of the importance of the Commonwealth. My own constituency has people from Cyprus, from Malta, from South Asia, from Africa. It's vital that we continue those links at the parliamentary level. It is a vital tool that we work together with government, and we ministers are committed to that. I want to thank everybody for their contributions today. I look forward to seeing this bill progress, I hope, rapidly, and I commend this bill to the House.
The question is that the bill be now read a second time. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Programme motion to be moved formally.
I beg to move.
The question is, as on the order paper, as many as that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Money resolution.
I beg to move.
The question is, as on the order paper, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes